प्रिय विद्यार्थियों, आज हम डिस्कस करेंगे द स्पेक्टेटर क्लब बाय रिचर्ड स्टील। इससे पहले की वीडियो में इस ऐसे के बारे में, रिचर्ड स्टील के बारे में हमने बात की थी। आज के इस वीडियो में हम चर्चा करेंगे द मेंबर्स ऑफ द स्पेक्टेटर क्लब, देयर different characteristics. So let's start the video. The essay Spectator Club by Steele is an amusing account of certain members of one of the reputed club of London. In the course of essay, Steele calls the members of this club as a set of humorists. He begins with the character delineation of Sir Roger D. Coverley. However, the characters who form the Spectator Club are not viciously satirized, rather like the essays in Tetler. The satire is chiefly mild but, from a political perspective, pointed enough so that readers understood that Tories should not be running the government. The most memorable character or the most memorable member of the club is Sir Roger D. Coverley. He is a typical country squire. He is not an aristocrat of its genre, but a man who is kind and good to his friend as well as servants. He prefers to be kind and good fellow rather than follower of soulless conventions and insincere manners. He shows genuine interest for the common people. He doesn't follow the conventions of barons to keep distance from poor strata. So, Sir Roger D. Coverley, a confused member of the landed gentry whose political, philosophical, and religious ideas about 100 years behind the times. He represents Addison's and Steele's version of typical Tory of mid-18th century. Too conservative, old-fashioned, clinging to outmoded moral beliefs, unsympathetic to the plight of the common man, blissfully unaware of economic and social changes in society. Steele talks about the first gentleman of his company, whose name is Sir Roger D. Coverley. The people who knew about the country of Sir Roger knew Sir Roger. Sir Roger was a man of extraordinary nature and had a good sense. He always found fault with the ways of world, but this unusual nature never made him any enemies. Sir Roger had a unique capacity to please others. He was a bachelor because he was disappointed in love of a beautiful widow. Before this disappointment, Sir Roger was a normal, happy young man. He moved in society of important persons like Lord Rochester and Sir George Atherton. However, after being ill used by the widow, he lost all his joviality and interest in social life for more than a year. He became very serious. Gradually, his joviality returned. However, he grew careless about his dress. He wore a coat and a jacket of a cut which was in fashion at that time. Now, Sir Roger was 56 years old but was very quiet, hale and healthy. He had a house in village and town. He had such a good nature that people loved him. He also treated his servants well. He was also the justice of the quorum and showed his judicial abilities on the hair of the justice of a quarter session. So these are the characteristics of Sir Roger de Coverley. Still presents another member of the club who is a lawyer. He studies law only because his father wanted it. Still has described another companion of the club. He is a lawyer. He was also a bachelor. He was a man of sharp wit and clear understanding. He chose his occupation rather to obey the direction of his old father than to incline to his own tendencies. He took to the study of law in obedience to his father. He was more interested in the study of drama and dramatic criticism. The philosophers like Aristotle and Longinus were well understood by him. His father used to send him various questions on law in order to ensure his son's progress in legal studies. The son outwitted the father by getting them answered through a lawyer whom he had engaged for the purpose. Nobody took him as a fool, but only his friends knew that he had a great wit. He liked to read the books which were not of the age he lived. He was familiar with the writings, customs, actions, and manners of ancient writers, which made him a keen observer of the worldly affairs. He was a good critic. His real presence of an able critic among the audience would rouse the actors to give the best performance possible. Next, the author has discussed about Sir Andrew Freeport, who was a good businessman of London. He was very laborious, experienced, and had a great understanding. His knowledge of commerce was extensive. He had his own ideals of the ways of enlarging a country's trade. He was of the opinion that a domain may be extended by art and industry rather than by power. Diligence or industry alone would help the country to gain things of the permanent value, and sloth or idleness more than the sword had caused the ruin of many nations. He knew very short maxims. He had a unique art of speech. He was a self made person who believed that England too would become richer rather than kingdoms by methods which had so beneficiated him. After Sir Andrew, the author has described the merits of Captain Sentry. He was very courageous, intelligent, and had good understanding. He was such a man who had not received good consideration of his abilities. He had been captain in military for many years and fought bravely on fronts. He left the army because even though he rendered meritorious services which anyone could see and appreciated, promotion did not come to him. He used to say that only men could hold a position in military who gets over his false modesty. He was of the opinion that if a cowardice is to stand back, modesty. Similarly, a man who failed to assert himself and demand what was his due was a coward. He was frank in speaking about the weakness of his officers. This frankness was a part of his character. Though he commanded many persons in military, he was never haughty. He never became a flatterer, although he obeyed his superiors. The author then talks about Will Honeycomb. Though he was old, there was no traces of the passage of time in his brain or in his person. He had an attractive personality and could impress women by his talk. He dressed well and was well acquainted with the history of every fashion that remained in vogue in England. Will Honeycomb was always interested in matters pertaining to women. In his conventions, he talked mostly of women, their dresses, their manners, and their fashions. He had a good knowledge of history. He could tell that the hairstyle or heads of our wives and daughters resemble to those of ranches of French kings. But the author says that he was a gentleman living the relationship of women. He was an honest and worthy man. So these are the characteristics of the members of the Spectator Club described by Richard Steele. The sketches of the members of the Spectator Club attempt a comprehensive criticism both on social types and individuals. They are humorous either by exaggerating their class characteristics or by deviating from them. In the club, we notice representative men of the times who raise our smiles but whom we can't help loving at the same time. So, this was a character analysis of the essay The Spectator Club by Sir Richard Steele.